What's up, everybody? If you're watching this, you may have seen our Showa, Heisei, Millennium, and MonsterVerse Godzilla videos. Now we're going to talk about the newest era of Godzilla films, which is the Reiwa era, which includes 4 films: Shin Godzilla and the Godzilla anime trilogy. Shin Godzilla is the first live-action Godzilla film from Japan since 2004's Godzilla Final Wars, coming out in 2016, 2 years after the American Godzilla, which was also a Godzilla reboot, much like this one. But unlike most Godzilla reboots, this one doesn't have anything to do with the 1954 one. Instead, imagining a more realistic Japan and how they would deal with the crisis of Godzilla, while Godzilla's evolving and increasingly making the problem worse, and our main characters trying to essentially get around the red tape and stop Godzilla before Japan can expand the disaster and make everything worse for themselves. So Aiden, what did you think of Shin Godzilla?
Shin Godzilla is a very good movie. A big portion of the movie was made as a response to the Japanese government's handling of the 2011 earthquake, tsunami, nuclear meltdown, whole mess, the government's handling of that. So it's finally a Godzilla movie that has a message for the first time in...
Yeah, I mean, it probably was the biggest event in Japan since the nuclear disasters, in terms of disasters, or nuclear bombings in terms of disasters.
So it's very interesting, nice allegory for that. The characters are consistently interesting. There's a lot going on in the dialogue. It's not like shot flat, nor is the dialogue ever flat. It's constantly moving even when there aren't monsters on screen. And it's a very interesting story in that regard. From a visual standpoint, well, it's shot very well. There's lots of creativity in the shots. It was co-directed by 2 guys. One is Hideaki Anno, who made Evangelion, so he's worked a lot with the visual medium of anime. So there's a lot of very, very good framing and things of that nature. Lots of interesting shots and dynamic movement.
It's kind of static and snappy in the same way like an Edgar Wright film is at times. At least in scene transitions and stuff, where it'll cut from like Godzilla rampaging to someone slapping down a plant or something like that, where it conveys information really well, but it also goes very quick from point to point.
Yeah, it's very well edited, very well paced. The monster stuff is all pretty fun. Godzilla's fun. There's some really great Godzilla scenes in here. The back lasers. Lots of stuff going on in the movie, all over the place. Some of the CGI is pretty crusty. Japan still hasn't really learned the art of CGI. So there's some moments that look very bad, but it's a well put together movie. It's an interesting allegory, an interesting dissection of the government's handling of the 2011 disaster. It's generally just very good. And, Yep, I like it a lot. Connor, what'd you think of Shin Godzilla?
I would say this is probably my favorite Godzilla film. Godzilla's design is amazing in this film. I love how he morphs throughout the film from an aquatic animal to a giant Godzilla creature, kind of like a frog going from a tadpole to a frog.
And then in the very last shot of the movie, he's becoming people, because people proved that they were stronger than him.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's pretty sick. And, yeah, so that was all amazing. All the disaster stuff was really cool. Godzilla definitely felt like a natural disaster again, more animalistic, but also like when he's tearing through Japan, he's just like walking in a straight line through and kind of defending himself and stuff, which I think adds to that natural disaster type of framing that the movie's going for. All the main characters are really likable. It's actually a good human plot with a lot going on. It's not just like we need filler time between our 40 minutes total time of Kaiju Rampage, which is appreciated because a lot of these films choose to have complete bullshit stories. So, yeah, that was nice. Like you were saying, I think the editing's great. The shot composition's great. There's a few really crusty shots in there. Like there's this one train part with the bullet train where I was like, wow, that's some crusty fucking like Mortal Kombat Annihilation looking CGI.
Some
but
helicopter stuff too.
yeah, I mean there's some stuff that looks pretty good. And on the contrary, a lot of the practical effects are really nice. Like Godzilla suits and stuff are really cool. So
yeah,
while the CGI is pretty crusty, Japan still keeps up very well with practical effects. The story's very strong, and overall, it's just a very enjoyable standalone little Godzilla adventure that doesn't expect you to know too much about the lore. Anyone can get into it, and it's very good.
The next three are all part of a trilogy. The Godzilla Netflix anime trilogy. Starting with Godzilla Planet of the Monsters.
Go to hell! You bastard!
Godzilla Planet of the Monsters takes place in like the year 5000 or something.
Well, I'm really confused when it takes place, because they say Godzilla's like 10,000 years old, but also 22 years ago they fled the planet, and it looks like it's modern day, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There's fucking a bunch of dudes on spaceships. There's the humans. There's the
Elf-looking ones.
weird, like, darker skinned ones who all have weird names like Gold Goo. And they're like robot smart guys.
They kind of remind me of the rock people from Zelda.
The Gorons? Not
Yeah.
really, but sure.
Maybe name-wise. That's how I remembered them, like all the names.
And then there's the weird pale scientist guys, religious guys. They're not really important in this one. Anyway, all these people go back to Earth 22 years after it was abandoned because everyone got sick of Godzilla's shit. Godzilla was just stomping around. We got a new version of Godzilla called Godzilla Earth. Well, there's two Godzillas in this movie. But these new Godzillas are made of plants. And instead of firing energy beams, they have like a weird electromagnetic shield. And they can divert their shield into lasers. And they're really fucking big, even as far as Godzilla goes. So in this first movie, they go down to Earth. They're like, fuck you, Godzilla, we're gonna kill you to take our planet back. And they kill Godzilla, but then a bigger one wakes up.
This is unbelievable!
There's like an hour of people just standing around in a spaceship talking before that, so. Connor, what'd you think of Godzilla Planet of the Monsters?
Godzilla Planet of the Monsters, I guess it's the first one in the trilogy, so I probably shouldn't say this outright. I guess who cares? You can't spoil it in a review. This is like the only good one, really. Truly good one. Not really good.
I don't know if I'd call it good.
It's like Godzilla 1954 in the future. Like, this one actually seems like more rooted in Godzilla, where the other two say fuck Godzilla's lore and shit and just completely reimagine Godzilla for primarily worse. I liked the characters. I don't know. The animation, at times I liked it. I got used to it eventually. I can't tell if I ended up coming around to the animation or if I just got used to it. Godzilla looks chunky as hell and clunky as hell in the animation. He just looks plain old crusty.
I think
The humans kind of look fine, but I just was not fucking with Godzilla's design.
the models and textures on the animation are fine, but this one's CGI. Some of the models are fine, most of them.
Yeah.
Godzilla looks bad, but the thing is, they decided to make it traditional anime frame rate. Anime is animated at like 16 frames a second instead of 24. And when you have that in CGI, it looks fucking weird. And you don't get like tweening with the 3D animation. It just makes everything look stuttery and gross.
Preposterous.
Yeah. This movie sets up a lot of characters that become important in later entries. Like the villain from the third one is kind of important in this one.
It's kind of important in the second. The second villain's kind of important in this one too, a little bit.
Yeah, well, like, you think he's kind of the villain, but he's just kind of around. Yeah, I don't know. Like, most of the characters in this film die when they try to fight Godzilla.
Yeah.
So, this movie feels pretty inconsequential other than they come down to Earth and they kill little Godzilla. Which is kind of the biggest problem, is each one of these is, like, intimately connected to the next, but also the story progression doesn't really work. I mean, if we look at a trilogy as, like, a 3-act story, if you have wholly different goals in every movie, and kind of the stakes and ideas in the movies change each time. Like, the first two movies are squarely about killing Godzilla. And then the third one isn't. At all.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But it kind of becomes a problem, because it's like, is Godzilla the threat? The arc doesn't really... There's no, like, through-line arc. It's hard to talk about just one without talking about the whole trilogy, but as it goes for this film, there's some cool ideas. I like the character models, even though the anime frame rate doesn't wholly work in CG. And overall, the first anime Godzilla was fine. So, Aiden, what did you think of Godzilla Planet on the brink of destruction or whatever?
Planet of the Monsters.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's, I guess I find the setting of the world moderately interesting. I think it's definitely an interesting direction to take Godzilla in. Some of the characters are alright. I guess Haru, the main character, isn't that bad. We get introduced to the Mothra people, who are native people, get introduced to a lot of people. A good 3/4 of this movie is just exposition and lore dumping. So it's really very boring. It sets up some interesting stuff to happen in the later two movies, which doesn't really happen. It just kind of like meanders. The Godzilla stuff is kind of okay, I guess. You know, they're shooting Godzilla in mech suits, that's kind of cool. But it's mostly pretty boring. So yeah, yep, it's a little hard to talk about this, so I'm gonna save a lot of my ranting on this trilogy for the end. So
Yeah, it's also worth noting that if you're looking, at least for this film, this is going to be the most satisfying if you're looking for Godzilla action.
yeah,
If you're hoping, oh wow, this character is going to be in the film, chances are they do him absolutely like shit. Like this one kind of tries, but there's not a single like real kaiju fight in this whole movie. Anyways, the next film in this trilogy was Godzilla, City on the Edge of Battle. This basically takes place right after the first one. They discover the base that was formerly Mechagodzilla, who's made out of a metal that can form and switch into different shapes and kind of has its own brain, and a bunch of the bulky people, the bulky darker skinned people on the airplane on the satellite ship thing say, we're gonna morph with Mechagodzilla. And then they morph with Mechagodzilla, and they want the main characters to also join with Mechagodzilla, but then the character shoots it, and that gives up their only chance to defeat Godzilla. So Aiden, what did you think of the second one?
okay, so yeah, I mean, so in case it wasn't clear, the alien people are the ones who originally gave Mechagodzilla to Earth, and then it became Mechagodzilla City, and it was like their plan to take over the Earth.
It's like that. It's like Fortress Maximus from Transformers.
Yeah, it's called Mechagodzilla City at the point that it is in the movie. So Mechagodzilla City, yes. So it was all a big ruse by the darker guys to take over by killing Godzilla. I guess there's kind of an interesting moral decision on whether to betray his principles to fight Godzilla or blow up Mechagodzilla City, but it's not that interesting. The Godzilla stuff amounts to Godzilla walking into a city and then shooting some lasers. Oh man, yeah, got this. It's kind of a drag. Anyway, Connor, what'd you think of City on the Edge of Battle or whatever the fuck it's called?
Yeah, so the rest of this trilogy kind of just is like, oh, the other people, the other races that are working with the humans, or it turns out they're evil and have different plans to destroy Godzilla for their own benefit, whatever.
Yeah.
And this one wasn't interesting.
No.
There is there's the idea that there could be a Mechagodzilla that's kind of cool, but then they cock block you. They don't change him into Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla is just sleepy this entire trilogy. Like, he just kind of stands there, and then they like attack him, so he shoots a laser and kills him.
Yeah, he's a lazy boy.
Like, there's actually almost no point. Like, I don't understand why Godzilla doesn't attack them if he basically killed the world's population. Like, we're implying that there's like an aggressive Godzilla, and then what we see is a Godzilla
Maybe
that
he's
every
just
time
elderly
he's in
by the
shot-
time they get back there. And he's just
He's
just retired. He just wants to stand around in his lawn.
He literally just wants to stand in his lawn, but the people keep trying
His
to kill
fucking
him.
kids keep throwing
And-
stones at his house.
There's kind of the moral to the story with that at the end of part 3, but we'll talk about that in a second. But not really at the same time.
It's like,
So it's like this internal conflict between that group, and after our main character Haru's girlfriend thing gets fused against her will with the robot. he's like, that fucking sucks. So then he blows up Mechagodzilla City, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about how Mechagodzilla City is a huge threat that could dominate the planet, but then he just blows it up in one shot and it's over.
You're like, okay, there's 45 minutes of exposition, there's a half hour of, like, sitting in this cockpit screaming, should I do it or should I not? And, like, flashbacks and talking and talking and talking. And you're like, okay, maybe, like, against their will, they're going to have to choose to either fight Mechagodzilla or fight with Godzilla. You're thinking something is going to happen. And then somehow, even though Mechagodzilla could seemingly is incredibly overpowered, with his single mech suit, he's able to, like, shoot the guy and kill him. Which is confusing to me because I thought the idea was that the nanometal could work by, like, just without like a human.
Yeah, like.
But then once they kill the one guy,
it just shuts down, yeah.
It's just never mentioned again. In part 3.
Well, it comes up in the very last scene of part 3, but yeah.
Right, much. But like, yeah, it's fairly pointless. So yeah, part 2, probably the worst part. At least
there's literally nothing going on.
At least part 3 kind of goes balls to the walls, but I guess we'll talk about that.
The final movie in the trilogy is Godzilla the Planet Eater, and this is where it all ties up. So Haruo's girlfriend lady is in a coma because of the metal. The religious guys do some stuff, chant some things. Haruo starts banging one of the native chicks.
Yeah, like one of the Mothra twins in this universe.
Yeah, one of the Mothra girls.
Who looks like Zelda.
Or maybe both.
Can I point out that, yeah, I'm confused. I thought the one that he was talking to was the one he banged at the end, but then the other one was pregnant.
Just banging them both.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he goes into hiding. The religious guys call up King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah flies down from portals, and he blows up the spaceship, and he starts biting Godzilla, and Godzilla stands there and gets bitten for 30 minutes. And Haruo pokes out the religious guy's eyes. And everyone has to live a nice primitive life.
Well, you gotta tell him why he pokes out the eye. It's because he has the Millennium Eye from Yu-Gi-Oh, which controls King Ghidorah.
I'm not, for I too possess one of the 7 Millennium items, the all-powerful Millennium Eye.
A Millennium Eye?
From another dimension.
Well, yeah. So, and then at the end, the scientist guy, it jumps forward like 6 months, and for some reason they still haven't buried Haruo's comatose girlfriend, even though they've confirmed she's never going to wake up. And the scientist guy steals some Mechagodzilla nanometals from her titties and turns the robot back on. Haru's like, that sucks. I have to kill myself now, and he flies his thing into Godzilla and blows him and his dead coma girlfriend and the robot up, and leaves his 2 pregnant sister wives behind to let everyone live primitive cave people lives, because that's the better way, I guess. So, what'd you think of Planet Eater?
I thought it was like okay, just to start off, the moral kind of gets fucked up at the end because
The moral doesn't make any fucking sense.
Because, so Haru, after, like, he's under curse from the or he's, like, getting hypnotized by the Millennium Eye.
My Millennium Eye!
And he, like, has a choice to, like, let the Earth die to Ghidorah because he's, like, being told by his beloved family members in his hypnotized state to do that. And then he says, well, life's worth living even if it doesn't mean anything after all, but it's still worth living because life is beautiful. And then he kills himself 10 minutes later. Like, I honestly thought
He decided that the real meaning of the story was
that
not
maybe
to
truly,
perpetuate hatred or something.
he's like, maybe the Millennium Eye guy was right after all, because humans are always going to try to, like, push forward or something. It was bullshit. It's what it was. It was bullshit.
Yeah.
It was a load of bullshit. It went against the theme.
The moral of the story is literally
maybe I shouldn't kill myself.
reject
but actually,
civilization, return to monkey, I guess.
But not even at the same time.
It is. That's the conclusion. If you make technology, you're gonna fuck things up. So you might as well be
the
fucking
extra
cave
moral.
people.
But the first moral is, you only got one life. You better live it, baby. And then he kills himself.
Yeah, and then the moral of him killing himself
Was
is
to eliminate
hatred.
Because he said something
But
like,
then all
me
the
and
other
the girl
all the other warrior people
are
just
still alive,
allowed to live and do whatever.
So I don't get why he killed
was just
himself.
the most
He was just
hatredist. He really
I don't even
hated
understand
Godzilla.
why.
He
Oh,
really hated Godzilla, I guess.
yeah.
No one else did, apparently.
The scientist
No one
guy
else
still
did,
was.
but-
The scientist guy was the one who's like, "Hey, we can make this invention to fight Godzilla if you want." And then he's like, "Well, fuck! Now I got to kill myself."
Now
Like,
I gotta abandon my pregnant wife.
Yeah. Honestly, the vibe I felt was it felt like almost, and I know this wasn't the intention, but it was like he accidentally got the native chick pregnant and he killed himself because he's a deadbeat father. That's kind of what my vibe. Like sitting there watching it, I was like. That's what it felt like. I was like, he
that's
learned a
weird.
lesson, and now he's all happy because he has his two
What's
hot
shocking-
native wives. You know, he's fucking them both, even though they're twin sisters.
What's shocking, really, is that it's been like how many months since the shit ended? Like 6 months at least.
He's banging Ahsoka Tano from
Well,
Star
yeah,
Wars: The
but
Clone Wars.
It's been 6 months, and they just had his ex-girlfriend sitting there in a coma on the table, and no one's like, maybe we should bury her.
Do you think he was fucking her too?
Someone was. The scientist was in there ripping fucking cells out of her body.
They were
I'm
all
sure he was
dudes
boinking
except
her.
for her, and he's taken both the twins. So, what option?
Everyone was just like, yeah, we'll just leave her on that table for the rest of the time. No one was like, we should bury her or cremate her or something.
Yeah.
They were all just fine. He's like, yeah.
I actually didn't mind the idea of what they did with making like Ghidorah like a god character, and I didn't mind what they did with Mothra either. But the problem is, then you have this literal Godzilla who does nothing but sits here. So I didn't mind like the metaphysical Ghidorah and Mothra, but it just like, if you're gonna go that route, like at some point in this trilogy,
Well,
give Godzilla something.
According to what I've read on the wiki, Mothra is not metaphysical. Mothra just hasn't hatched yet.
Right.
There's two
Well, that's
other-
what I figured. It was
There's
like
two
fetus
other
metaphysical.
Mothras in the books, and those Mothras are just dead, and this one hasn't hatched, so it's just a psychic egg in this movie.
Yeah.
But it eventually will hatch. It's not some weird shit.
No, I knew the egg was there, so that's what I gathered. But I was like, I didn't mind that he like manifested in a metaphysical form to help out, because that's like some bullshit Mothra would do in the normal movies. And I thought like the imagery of Ghidorah was really cool, but like I wish once he like lost, because it's confusing too, because he's like, he can only come through and see this dimension because of the guy with the Millennium Eye from Yu-Gi-Oh!
My Millennium Eye!
Well,
For some
Ghidorah-
reason he has the Millennium Eye. Is it because he has the kryptonite? You know,
He's
he
the
has
one
the
who
kryptonite he
summoned
keeps turning
Ghidorah.
over, which I imagine somehow turns his eyes into Millennium Eyes because he believes in God so much, and God is actually just a dragon from another dimension.
Yeah, the eye shit.
It
is
doesn't
weird.
make sense.
The idea behind the eye shit, Ghidorah has a lot of like metaphysics stuff tied into him, like the ability to bend time and space and all that, and there's some cool stuff to do with that.
Yeah.
And it comes from like the idea that there are certain things that don't exist if they're not observed, which is how Ghidorah is able to touch Godzilla because he can observe him through the guy, but it doesn't really explain how the guy got a magical Millennium Eye.
You know, honestly, here's my thing about number 3. Number 1 felt, or this trilogy, number 1 felt the most like a traditional Godzilla. Let's kind of restart Godzilla from scratch, except in like a sci-fi setting. Number 2 was just boring dog shit. They didn't do anything
2
with
is
that.
fucking filler.
2 was a filler arc for no reason. And number 3 was like, they tremendously swung for it. There was so much shit packed into it. They tried so hard, but it just fell absolutely flat. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot they could have done, but ultimately, like, they send the audience mixed messages.
Very mixed.
The characters, they spend too much time establishing other characters to the point where, like, the villain in number 3 should have done more in 1 and 2. Like, he was there.
Yeah, he should have been doing something.
And he was, like, kind of like a friend to him, but, like, honestly, like, I didn't really pay him any mind, so it wasn't, like, a shocking Palpatine. Like, they almost did a similar scene, like, when he comes out as evil. It almost felt like a Palpatine-style scene in, like, Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
But, like, where he's like, oh, here, believe in, my God is going to destroy the world or whatever. Which is fine, but you should lead up to that more throughout the movies and make it seem like... I mean, I guess I could rewatch them and see if it seems like he's pulling more of the strings, but it seems like he's just kind of along for the ride.
He's along
like,
for the
I'm actually
ride,
just
and
the
then-
most evil guy.
He's along for the ride, and then once the other guy's plan doesn't work out, he's like, my turn.
Yeah, that's what it was. Why would he not start to try to enact this plan the moment they hit Earth?
Well, there's some bullshit about
Where
how,
he has
like,
to find someone with
he had to
ultimate
wait for
courage.
Godzilla to blow a bunch of people up, so they were desperate enough to summon Ghidorah
So he
or
really
something.
hated Ghidorah. And for some reason, like, the courage or spirituality of our hero was the reason he could summon King Ghidorah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get it. It seemed like all he did was flip the kryptonite, and all of a sudden he had the Millennium Eye.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it did also kind of have that feeling of, like, one of those Fire Emblems, like, our OC's fuck type of thing, because, like, you got the main character, and then he fucks the fairies that look like Ahsoka Tano meets Fire Emblem.
Yeah.
Actually, pretty much just looks like Ahsoka Tano without the head tentacles.
A little bit.
The white and orange, same color palette.
They got the stupid little Mothra feathers on their
Yeah.
forehead. Looks dumb as fuck.
It's bizarre. And then, like, it kind of, like, almost has, like, an Avatar swing to it, too. Where he's like, we gotta live with the natives. I love them because I fuck one of the native people. Dances with wolves, Avatar type of bullshit.
Pocahontas, yeah.
Pocahontas. Because, for some reason, like, native culture, she's like, I think you could die, so I gotta fuck you now.
何を
私できる
It doesn't really make sense, honestly. She's like, if you disappear, you die, but if our lives are linked, if you dick me down, our lives are linked. So, if he dicked her down, and then he died, would she die too? Is that, like, part of Mothra's magic, where it's like...
No, because he died and she was fine.
Oh, right, yeah. Maybe that's how he was
Just some
aborting the
bullshit, she
baby
was fine.
off screen. Oh, wait, no, because then she's old at the end. I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. I don't know. That was just some bullshit. That was just some stupid bullshit. Oh, yeah. So, Aiden, what did you think of this one? Godzilla Planet on the brink of
Yeah, I
destruction.
mean, this is really kind of... I'm actually going to talk about all three movies here, because talking about them individually is horrible. Because they're not individual movies, they're just like some weird crap.
They kind of like are super individual, but also not. It's like kind of
Yeah,
annoying
well,
how
the
it
thing
works.
is, nothing happens in the first two, and then everything happens in the third one.
Right.
But you can't just watch the third one alone, and the third one's still boring. But yeah. Ghidorah has some cool concepts with him. I like Ghidorah as a fourth dimensional being, and he can kill people before they're dead in this reality and do weird stuff. They got some weird physics shit going on with Ghidorah that's neat. Cool design. The fight between Ghidorah and Godzilla is fucking horrible. It's just the three Ghidorah heads all bite Godzilla, and then Godzilla stands there and gets bitten.
And
And
that's
then-
like 2/3 of the movie.
After the dude's eyes get poked out, Godzilla punches two of the heads once and they die, and then he just beams the third one and it's over. You know, Ghidorah stops being a threat the second his fucking space magic is taken away.
Yeah.
The
And it's so easy too when you think about the fact that all he has to do is be like, yeah, I don't want to destroy the world, and then he instantly snaps out of the hallucination and then just punches, like, squeezes the guy's eyes out.
Yeah. Yeah. The messaging of this whole series is insanity. Because the message in the first movie is just something humans don't have the ability to fight against nature or something.
Never give up, but also do. No, yeah, it's kind of never give up in that
A
one.
little bit. And then in the second one, the message is
Be an individual. Don't fold under peer pressure.
I
It's
guess.
a metaphor for smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, and then in the third one, there's like 15 morals ranging
Contradicting morals too often.
from it's better to be cave people than make technology, because if you make technology, you'll make nuclear bombs, which will make Godzilla, which will make some weird alien priest guy come down and summon a three-headed fourth dimensional dragon to eat Godzilla.
Suicide good and suicide bad are both
The
messages.
villain wants the main character to kill everyone to serve a higher purpose. The main character wants everyone to live because the native people say that living is winning, and you die if you lose if you die. But then he goes off and he kills himself because the real moral is that you shouldn't perpetuate hatred, and they should have just gotten along with Godzilla like the natives do. And I don't even really like the whole series. Godzilla's never really shown to do anything wrong. Like 99%
In
of
one
these,
flashback, he destroys a
there's
city.
one flashback where he's like destroying a city, and then every other time we see him in the entire trilogy, he's just like standing around looking at the sky, or like sitting around, or
looking through the Knox, bird watching. Because he's
he's
old.
just fucking not doing anything.
Waking
And
up
they're
at
like,
5
Godzilla
a.m.
is such a massive threat, we have to destroy him.
Godzilla wakes up at 5 a.m. or at 2 a.m. so he can watch for the newspaper.
I'm
on
fairly
Sunday.
certain that if humans wanted, they could go back to Earth and just live on the opposite side of the planet and they'd be fine, because
You
Godzilla
would
is
think.
not doing anything. He is not up to anything.
The entire movie
He has-
takes place within like a 5-mile radius.
Yes.
Seemingly.
Godzilla is not aggressive or a threat. The Mothra people just hang out in the woods. Godzilla does not bother them. Like,
Yeah, that's like saying there's a bear like 20 miles away from my house, so I should probably move. It's pretty much like what it feels like.
Everyone hates Godzilla. And so I guess like the theme, they talk about hating Godzilla through the whole trilogy, although it's not really expanded in a theme until the last second of this movie, where they're like, actually hate bad. But none
Yeah.
of the other soldiers who helped us fight Godzilla have hate for him. But I do, and this dead girl does, so we're gonna blow ourselves up. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get what they were going for with this trilogy. I don't understand the point of it being a trilogy. It probably could have just been one movie where you take like the first segment of the first movie. You take...
You just cut out the second.
Okay, no, you crush the first movie into the first act, and then you crush the third movie into the second two acts, and the second movie is just thrown in the dumpster because it sucks.
Yeah.
And that's a
You
movie.
eat out some of the main characters because, like, you know, the fucking movies, you eat them out as time goes on, and it turns out they have,
As
like,
time
no real
goes
plot
on.
relevant.
They spend
Most of them die in the first.
They spend like 40 minutes introducing characters in the first one, and then the entire end of the first movie is just bwap, 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 bwap.
Well,
Godzilla
then
nukes them all.
any smallest character that's still alive dies in the third movie at the first 5 minutes.
Pretty much.
Like, any of that, like, spaceship plot is immediately just gone.
Oh,
And then,
yeah,
like,
whole
the first
spaceship
20
gets blown
minutes
up and
of
it's
the
just
third
gone.
movie, they're like, we're gonna fucking execute him for treason, and then the whole ship blows up. And
Yeah, they have
it's
this-
just a drop.
They have this big hostage situation where the dark-skinned guys take over the ship, and they're like, we're gonna starve everyone out for power, and then King Ghidorah shows up 5 minutes later and just nukes the station.
Yeah, so it wouldn't
like,
have
thank
even.
you.
So the first half hour of that movie is entirely pointless
Yeah.
because they couldn't execute him because they die, and even if the oxygen ran out, the effect is the same. So what was the point of the first half hour of that movie other than filler? So you could really, you could just cut the first act, or you leave the first 30 minutes. Okay, so the first one, you leave the first 20 or so minutes, you introduce your characters. Then they fight Godzilla and kill the little Godzilla, and a few of them die, and they're like, yes, we did it, but then the bigger Godzilla's there. They're like, man, this is really hopeless. And then the priest guy's like, I have an idea. We can call, you have a lot of courage and hatred for Godzilla because your friend died. The girl dies fighting Godzilla instead of becoming like a nano machine.
Yeah.
And then he says, use your hatred to summon King Ghidorah. Then the guy gets the Yu-Gi-Oh eyes, and then Ghidorah shows up to kill Godzilla, and he has to learn that maybe Godzilla's not that bad after all. There you go. 2-hour movie, and you crush this trilogy in. And literally everything is accomplished exactly the same.
So anyway, to sum up my thoughts, first anime movie, okay-ish, interesting setup, doesn't go anywhere. Second anime movie sucks. Third one, okay-ish, stupid at points, mixed messaging. All three of them look kind of neat, but the low frame rate is ugly. And I don't think I'd recommend watching any of them.
Yeah, same. So, that was the Reiwa era so far. Apparently, Toho's starting their own Japan-based Godzilla cinematic universe, separate from the MonsterVerse. So, if that's true, we'll probably make a video on that eventually, or we'll just review the movies as they come out. If they...
Who knows?
Probably. Something. But, next up, we have Godzilla spin-offs, because we've now reviewed all the Godzilla movies. So we're going to talk about stuff like Rodan, Varan, the 4 Mothra movies, King Kong versus Mechanicon, and
Varan, Mysterion,
Rodan,
Rodan,
etc.
Mothron.
Yeah, so stay tuned, and next time we'll be looking at a bunch of mostly Showa era Godzilla spin-offs.